Okay, so picture this. It's a rainy Tuesday night in, let's say, New Orleans. The streets are slick, fog is rolling in off the Mississippi, and this beat-up sedan, it screeches to a halt outside a warehouse. A guy in a trench coat jumps out, kicks the door in, dodges a guard dog, and slaps a subpoena on some billionaire's chest shouting, "You've been served."
I think I've seen that movie. I mean, we've all seen that movie, right? And honestly, it makes for great cinema. It's dramatic, it's high stakes, it's action-packed. But if you actually tried that in the real world, specifically in Louisiana, which is where we're focusing today, you'd be out of a job immediately. You might even end up in the back of a police car.
Wow.
And most importantly, that piece of paper you just delivered, it would be completely worthless in court.
Worthless. Even if the guy technically got it.
Completely. And that's really what we're digging into today. We're pulling back the curtain on this sort of invisible logistical machine that keeps the courts moving. We're talking about process servers, but we're going way past the Hollywood trope.
Right. And for this deep dive, we've got a fascinating stack of documents. We have service agreements, pricing menus, and I do mean menus, from a company called Lafayette Process Servers LLC. Plus, we have transcripts from an industry podcast called Paper Trails, hosted by a veteran in the business, Scott Frank.
And what stands out immediately in these sources is that this profession, it isn't about adrenaline or, bounty hunting. It's about patience, research, and an almost paranoid adherence to the Louisiana Code of Civil Procedure.
Scott Frank actually has a great quote in the transcript. He calls that whole door-kicking thing TV stuff.
That's it. Yep.
He says the reality is much more about logistics.
Exactly. Think of it not as law enforcement, but as legal logistics. Because here are the stakes. If a server crosses the line, if they trespass, use force, or even just get the paperwork slightly wrong, a judge will just throw the service out.
So the client just loses their money.
They lose time and money. The goal isn't drama. It's creating a legally binding record that stands up when a defense attorney tries to tear it apart 3 months down the road. It's about being boringly accurate, not excitingly aggressive.
So let's unpack the business side of this, because I was blown away by the pricing menu. It really does read like a restaurant menu, but instead of appetizers, you're ordering, legal pressure.
It's a menu of urgency, is what it is. It's a fascinating look at how they monetize time.
So the baseline is what they call standard service. That runs you $120. Which, seems pretty reasonable for a professional service.
It is, but look at what that actually buys you. It buys you patience. For $120, you get up to 3 attempts to serve the person. But the key metric here is the time frame. The first attempt happens within 120 hours.
That's 5 days.
Right. 5 days just to knock on the door for the first time. Now imagine you're a lawyer, you've procrastinated, or your client just hired you, and the statute of limitations runs out on Friday. 5 days is an eternity. You're dead in the water.
And that's where the upsell comes in. The rush service.
Precisely. The price jumps to $200. You still get the 3 attempts, but now that first attempt is guaranteed within 24 hours.
So you're paying an $80 premium just to skip the line?
You're paying for them to drop everything and drive. In the world of legal deadlines, that $80 is often the difference between a lawsuit proceeding and a lawsuit being dismissed entirely. It's basically the cost of procrastination.
But the menu gets wilder. I saw stakeouts listed. That feels like we're drifting back into movie territory a little bit.
It does, but look at the cost structure. It's brutal. $120 per hour with a 4-hour minimum.
Whoa. So before they even put the car in park, I'm on the hook for almost $500.
Yeah. Correct. And that is just for a person to sit in a car and watch a door. But think about why that exists. If you're trying to serve someone who knows the system, someone who's actively dodging you, the standard knock and leave just doesn't work.
Right.
The stakeout is the brute force method. You are paying to outwit them. You're buying a human being's attention span.
It really puts a price tag on being evasive. If I hide from you, I'm literally costing you $120 an hour.
And that brings us to the most critical phrase in these documents, the one that defines what we could call the attempt economy.
I think I know the one you mean. All fees are non-refundable.
That's the one. The source material is crystal clear on this. The fees cover the attempt to serve, not the result.
So, okay, let's say I pay $200 for the rush service. They go out 3 times, but the guy's not home, or he moved, or he just refuses to open the door. Do I get my money back?
You get $0 back. You paid for the gas, the time, the labor, the outcome. That's essentially a gamble.
That feels harsh. I mean, I paid for a service I didn't get.
But you did get the service. You got the attempt. This is why the industry is so unique. In most businesses, you pay for a product. Here, you're paying for an effort. And that lack of guaranteed success, it creates some serious trust issues, which you can see in their payment policies.
Oh yeah, the payment section is aggressive. Prepayment is mandatory. And if you pay by check.
This was fascinating to me. If you pay by check, work does not start until the check clears. Not when they receive it, when it clears the bank.
That just screams that they've been stiffed before.
It tells you exactly who their client base is. A lot of times, it's lawyers or angry litigants who might be hesitant to pay if the result isn't perfect, or maybe the lawyer is waiting on their client to pay them. It's a messy chain of money. Once those papers are served, the server has zero leverage. You can't go back and unserve someone.
Right.
So they hold the service hostage until the cash is real.
Now, besides the money, there's the geography. We're talking about Louisiana here. It's not exactly a uniform grid of city streets like Manhattan.
No, it's a logistical nightmare. You've got major cities, but you also have vast rural parishes, swamps, and dirt roads. The documents describe what they call a hub system to manage all this.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, Lafayette Process Servers is based, obviously, in Lafayette, but they can't drive 4 hours to the Arkansas border for one envelope. The cost would be insane. So they have agents in key hubs, Lake Charles, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Covington.
Okay, so if the person I'm suing lives in one of those cities, I pay the standard rate.
Right, it's like a free shipping zone, basically. But the documents make a very sharp distinction for North Louisiana and other rural areas.
I saw that they call it a custom pricing situation.
It's essentially a rural tax. If you need to sue someone who lives down a 10-mile gravel road in a parish with no major city, you're paying for mileage. You're paying for time. It's supply chain management for due process. They're literally calculating the cost per mile of justice.
And speaking of barriers, there's a legal one that I found really confusing. The motion and order.
Ah, yes. The bureaucracy of the bayou. This is a very specific Louisiana quirk.
Explain this to me. In most places, if I want to hire a process server, I just hire them.
Right.
I pick up the phone, pay the fee, and they go.
Generally, yes. But the website specifically warns that for local Louisiana courts, you can't just hire a private server. You have to file a motion and order to have a judge appoint the company as a special process server.
Wait, so I have to ask a judge for permission to hire a guy to give papers to another guy?
Yes. You file a motion, the judge signs an order, and only then is the private company authorized to act.
Why? That seems incredibly inefficient. Why add that layer of paperwork?
It's about history and, well, revenue. Traditionally, serving papers was the sheriff's job, and the sheriff's department gets paid for that service. It's a revenue stream for local law enforcement.
All the money.
Always. If everyone hired private servers, the sheriff's budget takes a hit. So this motion and order thing is a hurdle. The court basically defaults to the sheriff unless you can prove you need someone faster or more specialized. You essentially have to petition the court for the right to be efficient.
And if you skip that step?
If you skip it, and the private server delivers the papers perfectly, it doesn't count. Service invalid, case dismissed. It's a minefield for any out-of-state lawyer who doesn't know the local rules.
That is terrifying. Just a procedural slip-up and you're done. And speaking of slip-ups, the digital strictness here is pretty intense. I noticed a rule about the name and email match.
This is where we see that modern chain of custody paranoia. The source warns that the name and email on the service agreement must exactly match the account uploading the files to their portal.
Why? That seems so petty. If it's John Smith versus Jay Smith, who cares?
A defense attorney cares. If John Smith signed the agreement, but the documents were uploaded by an account for, say, Legal Team 01, a lawyer could argue the chain of custody was broken. They could argue, how do we know who actually handled these files? How do we know they weren't altered before upload?
So a typo could derail a whole lawsuit.
Potentially. By forcing that exact match, Lafayette Process Servers is creating this hermetically sealed digital trail. They're trying to bulletproof the service before they even leave the office.
It's weaponized data.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that extends to the proof of service itself. They talk a lot about GPS timestamps.
Right. There was a testimonial from an attorney, Jason R., who seemed really impressed by the GPS updates. But again, I can track my pizza delivery. Why is this so special?
Because your pizza driver doesn't have to testify in court. Imagine this. The server drops the papers. 3 months later, the defendant stands up in court and says, Your Honor, I was never served. I wasn't even home.
And in the old days, that would just be he said, she said.
Exactly. And often a judge might side with the defendant just to be safe. But now the server produces a report. Your Honor, here are the GPS coordinates of my device on his porch at 2:01 p.m., and here's a photo of the door with the timestamp. It's irrefutable. It transitions the argument from subjective memory to objective data.
Moving from the digital to the physical risks, we have to talk about safety. Because walking up to a stranger's house to give them bad news seems inherently dangerous.
It is. Nobody is ever happy to see a process server. It's usually the worst day of their week, and that's why the officer safety clause in their agreement is mandatory.
Right, it asks the client to disclose criminal history, violence, or weapons.
Think about the implication there. If you're a lawyer representing a wife in a bitter divorce and you know the husband has a temper and a collection of firearms, you have a legal duty to tell the process server.
And if you don't?
If you don't and something happens, the liability shifts to you. You failed to warn them. It basically turns the client into an informant for the server's safety. They're crowdsourcing their risk assessment.
They also ask for a photo of the person, which makes sense. But I love the little upsell there, too.
Oh, right. If you cannot provide a photo, we can source one from the DMV for an additional fee.
Safety is a business model. Help us be safe, but we're going to charge you for the data.
It's smart business, and finding people is a huge part of this. They mention skip tracing.
Which sounds cool, like some spy stuff, but the description makes it sound a lot like database work.
It's administrative detective work, but there's a crucial distinction made in the sources between a bad address and what they call a non-est.
Non-est. That sounds like Latin.
It is non-est inventus. He is not found. In the industry, getting a non-est stamp means you failed. But Scott Frank argues that in Louisiana, a bad address doesn't mean the person is gone. It just means they're smart. Or specifically in this region, it means they're working.
And this brings us to the deep dive section of our chat, the local tactics. Because Louisiana has some very specific challenges that generic databases just miss.
This is where it gets really interesting. If you use some big national database, it assumes people go home at night. But the sources highlight the Oilfield factor.
Right. I didn't even think about this.
In Acadiana, you have a huge population working offshore. They work 14 and 14 rotations, 14 days on, 14 days off.
So if a generic process server goes to a guy's house, knocks, and nobody answers?
They could knock every day for 2 weeks and get nothing. The house is empty, the lights are off, the guy is on a rig in the Gulf of Mexico. A standard 3 attempts contract is useless here. You'll burn through your attempts and get a non-est return.
So how does Lafayette Process Servers handle it?
They check the rotation schedules, they identify the employer, and they use a tactic that is just pure logistics genius. They serve them at the heliport.
That is brilliant. You catch them right when they land.
Exactly. The source mentions PHI and Bristow specifically. These are helicopter transport companies. The server waits for the guy to touch down or catches him at the company HQ before he even gets on the chopper.
It's the one moment they're vulnerable.
And it requires that local knowledge. A national company wouldn't know to check a flight manifest for a helicopter. They wouldn't know which heliport services, which rig. It turns the process server into a sort of industrial stalker.
They also mention the student shuffle.
Right, tracking ULL students who move apartments every single semester. Yeah. That creates this trail of dead addresses. You have to be faster than the lease agreements.
And then you have the gated communities. River Ranch, Triomphe. You can't just drive in.
No, the guard won't let you in to serve papers. They are paid to keep people like process servers out, so the servers have to get creative. They call it creative intercepts.
I saw one specific example that made me laugh. Catching them at Red Laril's at 5 a.m.
For those who don't know, Red Laril's is this massive, famous health club in Lafayette. The idea is if you can't get them at home because of a gate, you find their habit. You find where they sweat.
It's skip tracing beyond the mailbox. It's tracing their behavior.
Exactly. If you know the target is a fitness nut, you don't camp out at his house. You camp out at the squat rack. You serve him between sets.
And to do all this, to find the behavior, you need to be visible yourself. There was a detail in the podcast transcript about a sponsorship from 337 Media.
Yeah, Scott Frank mentions them. They do web design and SEO.
It just struck me as a very modern admission. We think of process serving as this gritty, street-level job, but Scott is talking about SEO rankings.
Well, think about it. If I'm in a crisis and I need a server in Lafayette, I don't open the phone book. Nobody has a phone book anymore. I Google it.
Process Server Lafayette.
Precisely. If his website isn't in the top 3 results, he doesn't eat. To survive, he has to be a tech company and a logistics expert. He needs the secure portal, the encryption, the Google ranking. The era of the disheveled guy in a trench coat is it's over. This is the era of the tech-savvy logistics manager.
So let's recap this journey. We started with the Hollywood myth, the door-kicking action hero.
And we found out the reality is more about hub systems, 120-hour windows, and weird local court rules like the motion and order.
We saw it's a pay-to-play system. You want speed, that's $200. You want a stakeout, that's $500. And you're only paying for the attempt.
Not a guarantee. And we learned that safety isn't just about bulletproof vests. It's about clients legally having to disclose the defendant's violent history.
And we unpack the Oilfield logistics waiting at a heliport because the guy is offshore for 2 weeks.
It really is a surprisingly sophisticated machine. From the order online click to the judge signing the order, to the server waiting at the gym at 5 a.m. It's this weird mix of high-tech tracking and high-risk human interaction.
It really is the intersection of the digital cloud and the physical street.
Which brings us to the end. And I want to leave you with a thought about why this industry even still exists.
Go for it.
We live in a world of instant notification. I can ping you on 3 different apps right now. I can email you, text you, DM you. You can't hide from me digitally.
True. I can't. My phone is buzzing right now.
So why, in the year 2026, does the entire justice system still rely on one human being physically handing a stack of paper to another human being? Why haven't we just moved to service by email?
It's a good question. It seems so archaic. It feels like we're using 19th century methods in a 21st century world.
I think it comes down to the undeniable reality of the physical world. You can delete an email, you can claim it went to spam, you can ignore a text. It is so easy to ignore the digital world. It feels ephemeral.
But you can't ignore a person standing on your porch.
Exactly. When another human looks you in the eye and hands you a document, the abstract idea of the law suddenly becomes physical. It is in your space. You've been found, you've been seen, and now you have to face it.
It is the one notification you absolutely cannot swipe away.
Precisely. It forces reality upon you.
That's it for this deep dive into the reality of being served. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.